Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here with me tonight. Whether this is your first time joining me, or you've been here before, I want you to know how much I appreciate you taking this time to be here. Thank you for choosing to spend these moments with me as we embark on a journey together into a world of magic, wonder, and peaceful rest. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. If you enjoy these sleep stories, if they help you find peace at the end of your day, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's completely free, and it helps me tremendously. When you subscribe, you'll be notified whenever I upload a new story, so you'll always have a peaceful escape waiting for you whenever you need it. Just click that subscribe button below, and while you're at it, please hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. And if tonight's journey brings you comfort and rest, a simple thumbs up would mean the world to me. These small gestures help this channel grow and allow me to create more content for you. Now, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Are you enjoying these sleep stories? What helps you relax the most? The narration, the music? Would you like longer stories? Or is this length perfect for you? And what themes call to you? Fantasy and magic like tonight's dragon tale? Perhaps nature and peaceful landscapes? Or maybe mysteries and gentle adventures? Your feedback is incredibly valuable because it helps me create exactly what you need. So please, take a moment tomorrow to leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. I read every single one, and your input shapes what I create next. But for now, let's leave all of that aside. This moment is for you. This time is sacred. Whether you're lying in bed ready to sleep, sitting comfortably in your favorite chair, or wherever you find yourself right now, I want you to know that you're safe. You're exactly where you need to be. There's nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. Just be here with me as we take this journey together. So let's prepare ourselves. If you're able to, dim the lights around you. Make sure you're comfortable. Adjust your pillows, pull up your blanket, settle into your space. Let your body sink into whatever surface is supporting you. Feel the weight of your body being held, supported, safe. Take a deep breath in through your nose and slowly release it through your mouth. Again, breathe in deeply, filling your lungs with fresh, calming air. And release, letting go of any tension you're carrying. With each breath, you're becoming more relaxed. With each moment, you're letting go a little more. The day is behind you now. Whatever happened today, whatever is waiting for tomorrow, none of it matters at this moment. Right now, you are here, you are safe, and you are exactly where you need to be. Tonight's story will take you to a magical realm where a young dragon experiences the very first night of its existence. But this dragon's journey isn't filled with danger or excitement that would keep you awake. No, this is a gentle tale of discovery, of wonder, of finding peace under starlit skies. As we journey together, you'll feel yourself becoming more and more relaxed, more and more peaceful, drifting naturally and easily into restful sleep. You don't need to focus intently on every word. You don't need to remember the details. In fact, if you drift off before the story ends, that's absolutely perfect. That's exactly what should happen. Let my voice become a soft background, a gentle guide leading you deeper and deeper into relaxation, into comfort, into sleep. So close your eyes now, if you haven't already. Let your breathing become slow and natural. Feel your body becoming heavier, more relaxed with each passing second. Your forehead is smooth and relaxed. Your jaw is loose. Your shoulders are dropping, releasing all tension. Your arms are heavy and comfortable. Your legs are sinking into rest. Every part of you is letting go. And now, as you rest here in this peaceful state, we're going to begin our journey. We're going to step together into a world where magic is real, where dragons soar through ancient skies, and where the night holds nothing but peace and wonder. Are you ready? Just let yourself float on my words. Let yourself drift. Let yourself rest. The story begins now, and with it, your journey into deep, peaceful, restorative sleep. Thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting me to guide you. Now, let's begin. It had been winter then, Merlin remembers. The coldest winter in living memory, with snow piled so high against the tower walls that the windows on the lower floors were completely buried. The wind howled like a living thing, angry and relentless, and even with magic warming the stones, there was a chill that seemed to seep into everything, into the very air itself. Merlin had been younger then, though still not young. His beard had only just begun to show streaks of silver among the dark brown. His hands, now so weathered and lined, had been smoother, stronger, but his eyes had been just as tired as they are now, perhaps more so. He had been carrying a great burden in those days, a weight of responsibility that sometimes felt too heavy for one person to bear alone. He had been sitting in this very chair, before this very fire, trying to warm himself after a long day of tending to the sick in the village below. A fever had swept through the valley, taking the very old and the very young with cruel efficiency. Merlin had done what he could brewing potions, casting healing spells, sitting vigil beside bedsides through long nights. But even a wizard's power has limits. He had saved many, but not all. Never all. That evening, he had climbed the tower stairs more slowly than usual, each step an effort, exhaustion weighing down his limbs like stones. He had barely managed to light the fire before collapsing into his chair, still wearing his traveling cloak, too tired even to remove his boots. He had been sitting there, staring into the flames without really seeing them, when he heard it. A sound so faint he almost thought he'd imagined it. A tiny scratching at the chamber door, barely audible over the wind's howling. At first, he'd ignored it, thinking it might be a branch scraping against wood, or perhaps the old tower settling in the cold. But then it came again, more insistent this time. Scratch, scratch, scratch. And beneath it, almost too soft to hear, a sound that might have been ... crying. With a sigh, Merlin had pulled himself from the chair's embrace and moved to the door. He'd expected to find nothing there, some trick of the wind, perhaps, or his tired mind playing games. But when he opened the door and looked down, His breath had caught in his throat. There on the cold stone landing, nearly buried in a small drift of snow that had somehow found its way up the tower stairs, was an egg. But not just any egg. Even in his exhausted state, even in the dim light of the stairwell torches, Merlin had recognized it immediately. A dragon egg, no larger than a man's fist, its shell a deep emerald green shot through, with veins of copper and gold that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. And it was moving, rocking slightly back and forth, and from within came that tiny, desperate sound, the crying of something trying to be born, trying to break free, trying to enter the world, but not quite strong enough to manage it alone. Merlin had stood there for a long moment, staring down at this impossible thing. Dragon eggs were rare beyond measure, precious beyond price. How had this one come to be here, at his door, on this particular night? Who had left it, and why? But these questions had faded as another crack appeared in the shell, and the crying grew more urgent. Whatever the answers might be, they could wait. Right now, there was a life trying to emerge, and it needed help. Moving carefully, gently, Merlin had bent down and scooped the egg into his hands. It was warm, surprisingly so, even the bitter cold, and it vibrated slightly with the movements of the creature within. He'd cradled it against his chest and hurried back into the chamber, closing the door against the winter wind. He'd carried the egg to the fireside and knelt on the warm hearthstones, holding the egg close to the flames, but not too close, trying to give it warmth without overwhelming it. And he'd begun to speak to it softly in the old language, the language that predates human words, the language of comfort and encouragement that every living thing understands. "It's all right," he'd murmured. "You're safe now. You're warm. You can do this. You're strong enough. I'm here. You're not alone." He'd said these words over and over, a litany, a spell, a prayer, and slowly, so slowly, more cracks had begun to appear in the shell, spreading like a web across its surface. The crying had changed, becoming less desperate, more determined. Whatever was inside was gathering its strength, preparing for one final push. Merlin had watched, barely breathing, as a tiny claw no bigger than his thumbnail, tipped with a point sharp as a needlehead poked through the shell, then another, then the tip of a snout, scales gleaming wet and new in the firelight. The wizard had wanted to help, to peel away the shell and free the struggling creature, but he'd known better. This was a journey the dragon had to make alone. Birth is a kind of magic that cannot be rushed or aided, only witnessed and honored. So he'd waited, hands cupped around the egg, words of encouragement continuing their soft flow, while the creature inside fought its way into the world. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the shell had given way completely, falling in pieces onto Merlin's palms. And there, blinking up at him, with eyes too large for its tiny head, wet and trembling and absolutely perfect, was a dragon hatchling. It had been so small, smaller than Merlin had expected, no larger than a kitten, all delicate bones and translucent wings and scales that hadn't yet hardened into their adult brilliance. Its color was hard to determine. The scales kept shifting in the firelight from green to copper to gold and back again, as if the dragon hadn't quite decided what color it wanted to be. The hatchling had looked up at Merlin with those enormous eyes, already containing an intelligence that seemed ancient, despite being only moments old, and had made a sound. Not crying this time, but something else. A chirp, perhaps. A greeting. A question. And Merlin, this great wizard who had seen wonders and horrors beyond counting, who had counseled kings and fought dark forces and wielded powers that could reshape reality itself, had felt his heart crack open in a way it hadn't in years. All the weariness, all the sorrow, all the weight of responsibility and loss, it didn't disappear, but suddenly it felt bearable again. Because here, in his hands, was something new. Something that needed him. Something that looked at him not as Merlin the great wizard or Merlin the king's advisor or Merlin the healer, but simply as the first face it had seen upon entering the world. "Hello, little one," Merlin had whispered, and his voice had been rough with emotions he couldn't quite name. "Welcome. Welcome to the world." The hatchling had chirped again, and then, with movements still uncertain and uncoordinated, had climbed up Merlin's arm, tiny claws pricking through the fabric of his robe until it reached his chest. And there, right over his heart, it had settled down, curled into the smallest ball imaginable, and fallen immediately asleep. Merlin had stayed there on the hearthstones for a long time, hardly daring to move, one hand cupped protectively over the sleeping dragon. The fire had burned low, then lower, and eventually he'd had to shift position, his knees protesting the hard stone. But he'd been reluctant to disturb the hatchling, this tiny miracle that had appeared at his door on the darkest night of winter. Eventually, moving as carefully as if he were carrying water in his bare hands, Merlin had risen and made his way to his chair. He'd settled into its familiar embrace, and the hatchling had stirred only slightly, adjusting its position, but not waking, still pressed against his heart. And there they'd stayed, throughout that first night, wizard and dragon, finding warmth in each other's presence, finding comfort in companionship, finding hope in the simple fact of being together. When dawn had finally come, creeping slowly through the small window and painting the snow-covered world in shades of pink and gold, Merlin had still been in his chair, and the dragon hatchling had still been sleeping against his chest. The wizard had dozed throughout the night, not deeply, but in that half-aware state where you're resting but still conscious of everything around you, still ready to respond if needed. Every so often during the night, the hatchling had stirred and made small sounds, tiny chirps and squeaks that might have been dreams, or might have been the simple expressions of a newborn adjusting to existence. Each time, Merlin had murmured soft reassurances, his hand gently stroking the delicate scales, and each time the dragon had settled back into sleep. Now, with daylight filling the chamber, the hatchling began to wake more fully. Its eyes, those remarkable eyes that shifted color like its scales, sometimes amber, sometimes gold, sometimes the deep green of forest shadows, blinked open slowly. It lifted its head from Merlin's chest and looked around the chamber with an expression of such profound curiosity and wonder that the wizard couldn't help but smile. Everything was new to this tiny creature. The fire, now reduced to glowing coals. The shelves of books and mysterious objects. The tapestries moving slightly in the air currents. A golden morning light streaming through the window. All of it was being seen for the first time, and the hatchling's eyes tried to take it all in at once, moving from one marvel to the next. Then the dragon looked up at Merlin's face, and their eyes met fully for the first time in daylight. The hatchling tilted its head to one side, studying the wizard with an intensity that seemed far too old for something so newly born. And then, quite deliberately, it reached up with one tiny claw and touched Merlin's cheek, a gesture so gentle, so clearly intentional, that it felt like a blessing. "Good morning, little one," Merlin had said softly. "Did you sleep well?" The dragon had responded with a chirp that sounded almost like agreement, and then its stomach had rumbled, a surprisingly loud sound for such a small creature. The hatchling looked down at its own belly with an expression of surprise and confusion, as if wondering where that noise had come from. Merlin had laughed then, the first genuine laugh that had escaped him in weeks. "Ah, yes, you're hungry. Of course you are. Let's see what we can find for you." But what did baby dragons eat? Merlin had known the lore. Of course he'd read every book about dragons he could find in his long years of study. But reading about something and actually facing a hungry hatchling are two very different things. Dragons, he knew, could eventually eat almost anything: meat, fish, certain vegetables, even some metals when they were older. But a newborn? That required something special. Moving carefully so as not to jostle his passenger, Merlin had risen from the chair and carried the hatchling to his work table. There, among the herbs and potions and ingredients, he'd found what he was looking for: a jar of honey, thick and golden, harvested from the hives of bees that fed on magical flowers growing in a hidden valley. He dipped his finger into the honey and offered it to the dragon. The hatchling had sniffed at it cautiously, then extended a tiny forked tongue and tasted. Its eyes had widened with delight, and it had immediately begun licking the honey from Merlin's finger with enthusiasm, making small sounds of contentment that were almost like purring. "You like that, do you?" Merlin had said, amused. "Good, we have plenty of honey." He'd fed the dragon slowly, letting it lick honey from his finger again and again, until finally the hatchling's belly was round and full, and it sat back on Merlin's palm with a satisfied sigh, a tiny smear of honey on its snout. The wizard had cleaned the dragon's face gently with a soft cloth, and the hatchling had submitted to this grooming with drowsy contentment, its eyes already beginning to droop again. A full belly and a warm place, these were enough for now. These were everything. But before the dragon could fall back asleep, it had done something unexpected. It had opened its mouth, revealing rows of teeth no bigger than grains of rice, and released a tiny puff of smoke. Not fire, not yet. Just smoke, golden and sweet-smelling, like incense burned in ancient temples. And within that smoke, Merlin had seen images. Fleeting, half-formed, but unmistakable. he saw a cave high in the mountains. He saw another dragon, an adult, magnificent and vast, breathing gently over a clutch of eggs. He saw that dragon suddenly raising its head, alarm in its eyes, and then ... nothing. The images dissolved, leaving only questions. The hatchling's mother, Merlin, had realized. These were the dragon's first memories, imprinted before birth. The mother who had laid this egg, who had guarded it, and who had somehow known danger was coming. She had hidden this egg, the last of her clutch, and sent it away somehow, perhaps with magic, perhaps with the last of her strength, sending it to the one place she knew it might be safe. To Merlin's door. The wizard had felt tears prickling at his eyes then, understanding the weight of what had been entrusted to him. This wasn't just a dragon. This might be the last of its kind, or one of very few remaining. And its mother had chosen him, had trusted him to keep her child safe. "I promise," Merlin had whispered, cupping the drowsy hatchling in both hands, bringing it close to his face. "I promise I will protect you. I promise I will care for you. I promise you will never be alone." The dragon had looked at him with those ancient young eyes and made a soft sound, not a chirp this time, but something deeper, more resonant, a sound of trust, of acceptance, of home. And then it had yawned, revealing that tiny mouth, those rice-grain teeth, and tucked its head under its wing, falling asleep instantly in the way only babies can, going from fully awake to deeply dreaming in the space of a heartbeat. Merlin had carried the sleeping hatchling back to his chair and settled in once more. Outside, he could hear the village waking voices calling to each other, the sound of snow being shoveled, the everyday noises of life continuing despite the cold, despite the sickness, despite everything. He should go down there, he'd thought. There were still people who needed him, still work to be done. But as he looked down at the tiny dragon sleeping in his lap, he'd made a decision. Today, the village would have to manage without him. Today, he was needed here, by this small creature who had no one else in the world. Tomorrow, he would return to his duties. Tomorrow, he would be Merlin the healer, Merlin the advisor, Merlin the wizard. But today, just for today, he would simply be the person this dragon needed him to be. And so they'd stayed there, the wizard and the dragon, as the sun climbed higher in the winter sky. The fire had burned down, and Merlin had rebuilt it with magic, not wanting to disturb his sleeping companion. The hours had passed in peaceful silence, broken only by the dragon's soft breathing and the occasional pop of wood in the flames. At some point during that long, quiet day, Merlin had begun to speak to the dragon. It didn't matter that the creature was asleep. Didn't matter that it couldn't understand words yet. He'd spoken anyway, telling stories of the world the dragon had been born into, stories of forests and rivers, of mountains and seas, of the kingdoms of humans and the wild places beyond them. He'd told the dragon about magic, how it flows through all living things like water through stone, invisible but undeniable, connecting everything to everything else. He'd told it about the responsibility that comes with power, about the importance of wisdom over strength, about the value of gentleness and compassion, even especially when you have the ability to destroy. And as he'd spoken, something unexpected had happened. The weight on his own shoulders had begun to feel lighter. The burden he'd been carrying, the sorrow for the patients he couldn't save, the weariness of being the one everyone relied upon, the loneliness that had accumulated over years of being different, being apart, being the wizard, began to ease. Because now he had this tiny dragon who depended on him completely, who asked nothing of him except his presence and his care. There was something pure in that, something healing. For all his power and knowledge, for all his responsibilities and duties, right now, the most important thing he could do was simply sit here and let a baby dragon sleep in his lap. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything. When evening had come again, that first full day passing into the second night, Merlin had finally whispered, "You need a name, little one. Every being deserves a name." He'd thought of many possibilities. Ancient names from dragon lore. Names of power and fire and majesty. But none of them had felt right for this small creature who had appeared in the winter darkness like a tiny light. And then he'd remembered the way the hatchling had looked when it first emerged from the shell, the way its scales had glowed in the firelight, the way it had seemed to carry its own illumination, like a coal pulled from the flames but still holding its warmth and light. "Ember," he'd said softly. "Your name is Ember, because you are small but bright, gentle but warm, and you hold within you the promise of greater fire yet to come." The dragon had stirred in sleep at the sound of its new name, as if recognizing it on some deep level, as if the name fit like a key in a lock. And Merlin, holding his newly named companion, had felt something he hadn't felt in far too long. Joy. Simple, uncomplicated, pure joy. They had found each other, wizard and dragon, on the coldest night of the coldest winter. And in finding each other, they had both been saved. The memory drifts through Merlin's mind like smoke, gentle and warm, as he sits in his chair in the present moment, the now-grown ember resting in his lap just as it did on that first night so many years ago. The weight is heavier now, the dragon no longer a tiny hatchling, but still small enough to curl comfortably against his chest. But the comfort is the same. The peace is the same. The love is the same. In his half-dreaming state, suspended between memory and present, between waking and sleeping, Merlin remembers the days and weeks that followed that first miraculous night. Ember had grown quickly in those early days, as all young creatures do. Within a week, the dragon had doubled in size. Within a month, it was as large as a small dog, though it still preferred to sleep curled in Merlin's lap or draped across his shoulders like a peculiar scarf, tail wrapped loosely around the wizard's neck. The dragon had learned to eat other things besides honey bits of fish and meat, certain vegetables, and eventually small amounts of copper and silver, which it would crunch between its teeth with evident pleasure, the metals somehow nourishing something essential in a dragon's nature. But even as it grew and its diet expanded, Ember never lost its fondness for honey, and to this day, Merlin always keeps a jar of it in his chamber. More importantly than physical growth, Ember had learned to communicate, not with words, Dragons don't speak as humans do, but with sounds and gestures, with the colors its scales shifted to, with the images it could project in its smoke. Within weeks, Merlin could understand what Ember needed, what it felt, what it thought. And somehow, through the mysterious bond that had formed between them, Ember understood him too. On nights when Merlin returned to the tower exhausted and discouraged, when the weight of the world pressed too heavily on his shoulders, Ember was there. Sometimes the dragon would simply curl up beside him, offering silent companionship. Sometimes it would blow gentle smoke pictures images of beautiful things, peaceful things, reminders that not everything in the world was struggle and sorrow. And on nights when Merlin woke from dark dreams, gasping and disoriented, Ember was always there, warm and solid and real, anchoring him back to the present, reminding him that he was safe, that he was home, that he was not alone. But Ember needed him too, in ways both obvious and subtle. The dragon needed to be taught how to fly. Those first attempts had been comical and terrifying in equal measure, with Ember launching itself from increasingly high perches in the tower, wings flapping frantically, usually ending in a tumbled landing that left it dazed but determined to try again. Merlin had encouraged and consoled through every failed attempt, and his joy when Ember finally managed sustained flight had been as great as the dragon's own. Ember had needed to learn to control its fire, which first manifested as random bursts of flame that singed tapestries and set papers aflame. Merlin had been patient through all of it, teaching the dragon to breathe fire only when intended, to modulate its heat, to understand fire as a tool and a gift rather than something to fear or to use carelessly. Most importantly, Ember had needed to learn what it meant to be gentle in a world that often expected dragons to be fierce. Merlin had taught this by example, showing the dragon how power could be used to heal rather than harm, how strength could be wielded with compassion, how being capable of great destruction didn't mean one had to destroy. And Ember had learned these lessons well. The dragon had grown into a creature of remarkable gentleness, choosing kindness when fierceness was expected, offering warmth when others might have shown cold indifference. It had become exactly what Merlin had hoped it would become, not a weapon or a symbol of power, but a friend, a companion, a being of love and light. In the memory, Merlin sees one particular evening that stands out among all the others. It had been perhaps 6 months after Ember's hatching, and the dragon had been large enough by then to fly outside, to explore the world beyond the tower. That evening, Ember had returned to the chamber carrying something in its claws, carefully, so carefully as if holding the most precious treasure. When it landed and opened its claws, Merlin saw what it was. A single wildflower, bright blue, somehow still alive despite the dragon's hot grip, its petals perfect and unspoiled. Ember had placed the flower in Merlin's hand and looked up at him with those luminous eyes, and the wizard had understood. This was a gift, a thank you, an expression of love in the only way the dragon knew how to give it. Merlin had been moved to tear, something that rarely happened even for him. He had carefully pressed the flower between the pages of one of his oldest books, where it remains to this day, still holding its blue color, still perfect after all these years. Sometimes, when he needs reminding of what matters most, he opens that book and looks at it. That was the moment when Merlin truly understood what had happened on that winter night so long ago. He had thought he was saving a dragon, but really, the dragon had been saving him. Ember had arrived exactly when Merlin needed it most, when his heart had been in danger of hardening, when loneliness and responsibility had been crushing the joy out of him, when he'd been forgetting why he did what he did, why any of it mattered. The dragon had reminded him, not through words or grand gestures, but simply by being, by needing him, by offering uncomplicated love and trust, by showing him that he wasn't just the wizard, the advisor, the healer. He was also a friend, a protector, a companion. He was someone worth loving, not for what he could do, but for who he was. Through the years that followed, through all the adventures and challenges, through times of peace and times of danger, Ember had been there, growing from hatchling to juvenile to adult, but never losing that essential gentleness, that capacity for love, that bond with the wizard who had held it on its first night in the world. And now, in the present moment, in the quiet chamber lit by dying embers, that same dragon rests in Merlin's lap, head tucked against his chest, breathing in perfect rhythm with the wizard's own breath. They have been through so much together. They have seen wonders and weathered sorrows. They have grown old together, or at least Merlin has grown old and Ember has stayed young. For dragons age differently than humans, living centuries where humans live decades. Sometimes Merlin wonders what will happen when he's gone, when his time in this world finally ends. Will Ember be all right? Will the dragon find another companion, or will it choose to live alone, carrying the memories of their time together? But tonight, these thoughts don't trouble him. Tonight, holding his dear friend, feeling the warmth and weight and absolute rightness of their companionship, Merlin knows that some bonds transcend time. Whether he has one more year or 10 or 20, whether Ember lives another century or a millennium, what they have shared will remain. Love doesn't end just because life does. Connection doesn't break just because one part of it transforms. They will always be together in the way that matters most. In memory, in impact, in the way they've shaped each other into who they've become. Merlin's a better wizard, a better person, because of Ember. And Ember is the gentle, loving creature. It is because of Merlin. That first night, when a tiny hatchling appeared at his door in a winter storm, neither of them could have known how much they would come to mean to each other. Neither could have predicted the depth of the bond that would form, the ways they would save each other again and again simply by being together. But looking back now, from this quiet evening so many years later, Merlin can see the pattern. He can see how perfectly it all fits, how that moment of finding or being found was exactly what both of them needed. How sometimes the greatest magic isn't something you cast or command, but something you receive, something you let happen, something you open your heart to, even when you're tired, even when you think you have nothing left to give, because you never know what might be waiting on the other side of that door. You never know what small, trembling, newly born miracle might be there, needing you as much as you need it. A soft sound brings Merlin back fully to the present. Ember making that small purr sigh in sleep, the sound that means the dragon is content, safe, at peace. The wizard's arms tighten slightly around his companion, a gentle squeeze of affection, and he rests his cheek against the dragon's head, between those small horns that he's touched 10,000 times in 10,000 moments of comfort and connection. "Thank you," he whispers into the quiet chamber, into the soft darkness. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for staying. Thank you for every day we've had together." The dragon, even in sleep, seems to hear him. Ember's body relaxes even more completely, sinking more heavily into Merlin's lap, trusting absolutely in the wizard's hold. And Merlin, holding this gift that was given to him so long ago, feels his own body relaxing, his own mind settling into the deep quiet that precedes sleep. The memory has warmed him from the inside out, has filled him with gratitude and peace, has reminded him, as if he needed reminding, of how blessed he has been, how lucky, how loved. Tomorrow they will wake and begin another day. But tonight they rest together, as they have rested together countless times before, in perfect harmony, in perfect peace. Two beings who found each other in darkness and created light. Two souls who were alone and became family. Two friends who will be together, in one way or another, forever. The memory fades like the last light of sunset, and only the present remains. The warm chamber, the soft breathing, the deep peace, the perfect now. And in this now, there is everything they need. There is warmth and safety and love and rest. There is companionship and comfort and the profound contentment of being exactly where you belong, with exactly who you belong with. The first night is long past, but in some ways, it never ended. In some ways, they are still there, wizard and hatchling, finding each other, saving each other, beginning a story that would span decades and define both their lives. A story that continues even now, in this quiet moment, in this peaceful evening, in this last spell of the night. The memory shifts and deepens, like water finding a new current, carrying Merlin further into the past. His breathing remains slow and steady, Ember's weight warm and familiar in his lap, but his mind drifts to another time, another evening, perhaps 3 months after that first miraculous night. Ember had been growing rapidly by then, no longer the tiny hatchling that could fit in Merlin's palm, but a juvenile dragon about the size of a large cat, all awkward energy and boundless curiosity. The dragon's wings had developed fully, the membrane strong and translucent, veined with gold that glowed when light passed through them. Those wings had been folded against Ember's sides for weeks, twitching occasionally as if dreaming of flight, but never yet used for their intended purpose. Merlin had known the time was coming. He'd seen the way Ember looked at birds flying past the tower windows, the way the dragon's whole body would tense with longing, small sounds of frustration escaping when the birds soared effortlessly through air, while Ember remained earthbound. He'd seen the dragon climb to higher and higher perches in the chamber, first the chair arm, then the table, then the bookshelves, always looking down, always measuring the distance, always working up the courage. That particular evening, Merlin had been reading by the fire, ember curled on the hearthstones nearby, when suddenly the dragon had stood up with an expression of absolute determination. Without warning, without any signal of intention, Ember had scrambled up the side of the bookshelf with surprising speed, claws finding purchase in the wood, wings already beginning to unfold. "Ember, wait," Merlin had started to say, setting down his book and rising from his chair. But the dragon was already at the top of the highest shelf, crouched like a cat about to pounce, wings spread wide for the first time in their full glory. And then Ember had jumped. For one brief, beautiful moment, it looked like it might actually work. The dragon's wings caught the air, and there was lift, actual, genuine lift. Ember's eyes had gone wide with shock and delight, and Merlin had felt his heart soar with hope. But the flight lasted barely 3 seconds before the dragon's inexperienced wings lost their coordination. One wing folded at the wrong moment, the other flapped too hard, and suddenly Ember was tumbling through the air in a tangle of wings and tail and flailing limbs, heading directly toward the stone floor. Merlin's hand had shot out instinctively, and magic had flowed from him without conscious thought. A cushion of soft air, appearing just in time to catch the falling dragon, slowing the descent, turning what would have been a painful crash into a gentle, if undignified, landing on the chamber floor. Ember had lain there for a moment, stunned and still, wings spread awkwardly on either side. Merlin had rushed over, his heart pounding with fear, dropping to his knees beside his companion. "Are you hurt? Ember, are you all right?" he'd asked, hands hovering over the dragon, checking for injuries, looking for any sign of harm. But then Ember had lifted its head, looked at Merlin with those luminous eyes, and made a sound, small, frustrated chirp that clearly meant, "I want to try again." Merlin had laughed then, relief flooding through him. "Oh, little one, you are brave. Perhaps too brave for your own good." But he'd understood. This was important. This was something Ember needed to do, something essential to being a dragon. Flying wasn't optional. It was who dragons were, what they were meant for. Keeping Ember safe by preventing these attempts would be like keeping a bird in a cage. It would be protection, yes, but it would also be a kind of cruelty. So Merlin had made a decision. "All right," he'd said, sitting back on his heels. "But let's do this properly. Let's do this safely." He'd carried Ember up to the top of the tower, not the chamber where they lived, but the very highest point, the open platform surrounded by crenellations, where Merlin sometimes went to observe the stars. Up there, the wind was stronger, and there was space, and most importantly, there was Merlin to catch Ember if things went wrong. They'd spent hours up there that evening, as the sun set and the stars emerged one by one. Again and again, Ember had launched into the air, and again, the dragon had tumbled and fallen, only to be caught by Merlin's magic, gently return to the platform, and immediately climb up to try once more. Merlin had never told Ember to stop, never suggested giving up. Instead, he'd offered encouragement after every attempt. "Your left wing folded too soon that time. Try keeping them both extended a bit longer. Yes, like that. Good, good. Now, when you feel yourself starting to tip, adjust with your tail. It's not just for show. It's your rudder, your balance. And slowly, gradually, over those long hours of attempting and failing and attempting again, Ember had begun to understand. The dragon's body had begun to remember what its instincts already knew: how to catch the wind, how to adjust for turbulence, how to coordinate wings and tail, and the subtle shifts of weight that mean the difference between flying and falling. The breakthrough had come just as the moon was rising, full and bright. Ember had launched once more from the platform's edge, and this time, the wings had found their rhythm. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3. The dragon had stayed aloft, actually gaining altitude, climbing up into the night air above the tower. Merlin had watched with his heart in his throat as Ember circled the tower once, twice, 3 times, each circle growing more confident, more graceful. The moonlight had caught the dragon's scales, making them shimmer like jewels, and the wings, those beautiful, translucent wings, had glowed with that golden light as they beat steadily, powerfully, keeping Ember airborne. The wizard had found himself laughing and crying at the same time, overcome with pride and joy and a fierce, protective love for this brave creature who had persevered through so many failures to achieve this moment of triumph. Finally, after several minutes of glorious, successful flight, Ember had circled back to the platform and landed not gracefully, not perfectly, but landed nonetheless, folding wings that trembled with exhaustion and exhilaration. The dragon had looked up at Merlin with an expression of pure, undiluted joy, and had released a puff of smoke golden and sweet that formed images of flight, of freedom, of the world seen from above, of wind and stars, and the intoxicating sensation of finally doing what dragons were born to do. Merlin had dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around Ember, holding the dragon close, feeling the rapid beating of that small, fierce heart. "I'm so proud of you," he'd whispered. "So very proud. You did it, Ember. You flew. You beautiful, brave, magnificent creature, you flew." And Ember, exhausted but triumphant, had collapsed against Merlin's chest, making that purse-eye sound of perfect contentment, and had fallen asleep right there on the tower's top, under the stars, in the arms of the wizard who had believed in it enough to let it fail, and fail, and fail again, until finally it succeeded. They'd stayed up there for a long while, Merlin holding the sleeping dragon, looking out over the moonlit landscape, thinking about bravery and perseverance, about how sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone you love is not to protect them from all hardship, but to stand beside them while they face it, ready to catch them if they fall, but also ready to celebrate when they soar. That night had changed something between them. Ember had proven its courage and determination, and Merlin had proven his trust and faith. The bond between them, already strong, had become unbreakable. From that night forward, Ember had flown every day, growing stronger and more skilled with each flight. The dragon would soar around the tower, explore the valley, chase birds just for the joy of it, and always return to Merlin, landing beside him or on his shoulder, sharing the experience through smoke images, wanting the wizard to see what the dragon had seen, to feel what the dragon had felt. And Merlin, watching Ember fly, had learned something too. He'd learned that love isn't about keeping those you care for close and safe and earthbound. Love is about helping them find their wings, teaching them to use those wings, and then hardest of all, letting them fly, trusting that they'll come back, not because they have to, but because they want to. In the present moment, the memory fades gently, like mist dissolving in morning sun. Merlin's hand moves slowly, unconsciously, to stroke the base of Ember's wings where they fold against the dragon's body. Those same wings that he watched learn to fly, that he's seen carry Ember through countless adventures, that still even now, even after all these years, fill him with wonder every time they unfold. Ember stirs slightly at the touch, making a soft sound in sleep, and Merlin smiles, his eyes still closed, his body heavy with approaching sleep, his heart full of gratitude for all the moments they've shared, all the lessons they've taught each other, all the ways they've helped each other become who they were always meant to be. They are together now, wizard and dragon, friend and friend, settling into the shape they make best, the shape of companionship, of trust, of shared rest. The firelight plays across them both, painting them in golds and oranges, in shadows and light. The magical orbs continue their slow drift overhead. The herbs hanging from the beams release their subtle scents. And in the crystal sphere on the table, the mist swirls more slowly now, as if it too's preparing for sleep. Everything in the chamber has found its place. Everything is as it should be. The day is done. The night has begun its gentle work. And two beings who have earned their rest are finally still. The stream of memory flows onward, gentle as a river finding its course, and Merlin drifts with it, deeper into the soft landscape of remembrance. His breathing has become so slow now, so peaceful, that each breath seems to last an eternity. Ember's weight in his lap anchors him to the present, even as his mind wanders through the past, and the two times then and now begin to blur together in the way they do when sleep draws near. Another memory surfaces, this one from perhaps a year after Ember's hatching. The dragon had been fully grown by then, or at least as large as it would ever be, for Ember had always been small for a dragon, never growing beyond the size of a large dog. Some might have seen this as a deficiency, but Merlin had always known it as a gift. Ember's size was perfect for companionship, perfect for curling in a lap, perfect for the gentle, peaceful life they shared together. It had been autumn, Merlin recalls. The forest surrounding the tower had been ablaze with color reds and golds and oranges. It seemed to glow from within, as if every leaf held a tiny flame. The air had been crisp and clean, carrying the scent of wood smoke from the village and the sweet decay of falling leaves. Merlin had been ill that week. Nothing serious, just a fever and cough that had laid him low, keeping him in bed when he was accustomed to being active. It was a rare thing for the wizard to be sick. His magic and his knowledge of healing herbs usually kept such ailments at bay. But sometimes the body simply needs to rest, needs to be reminded of its own vulnerability, needs to be cared for, rather than always being the one who cares. And Ember had been remarkable. The dragon had understood immediately that something was wrong, that Merlin needed tending. Without being asked, without any instruction, Ember had taken on the role of caretaker with a dedication and gentleness that had moved Merlin to tears more than once during those few days. In the memory, Merlin sees it all again as if it's happening now. Ember keeping the fire fed, dragging logs from the woodpile with careful teeth and arranging them on the hearth. The dragon bringing water in a copper bowl, holding it steady so Merlin could drink without having to rise. Ember fetching herbs from the shelves, the right herbs, somehow knowing which ones were needed and dropping them gently beside Merlin's bed. Most touching of all, Ember had stayed close, so close, through every hour of those days. The dragon had curled up on the bed beside Merlin, one wing extended over the wizard like a blanket. The warmth from Ember's body regulated perfectly not too hot, despite the natural heat dragons carry within them, but just warm enough to comfort without causing discomfort. When Merlin had been seized by fits of coughing, Ember had pressed close and hummed the deep, resonant sound that seemed to come from the dragon's core, a vibration that Merlin could feel in his own chest, soothing, calming, easing the spasms. The wizard had never heard Ember make that sound before or since. It seemed to be something instinctive, something ancient, a healing magic that dragons possessed but rarely needed to use. And when the fever had spiked during the night, when Merlin had tossed and turned with fever dreams that frightened him, visions of darkness and loss, of failing those who depended on him, of being alone, Ember had been there, solid and real, nuzzling against Merlin's face, blowing cool smoke that smelled of mint and summer rain, projecting calming images into the wizard's troubled mind. Images of the forest in sunshine, of the river flowing peacefully, of the tower standing strong and safe, of Ember and Merlin together in the chamber, warm and protected, nothing able to harm them, nothing to fear. Again and again through that long night, whenever Merlin's dreams turned dark, Ember's gentle interventions brought him back to peace. By the third day, the fever had broken. Merlin had woken to find himself weak, but clear-headed, the illness having run its course. And there was Ember, lying beside him, watching him with those luminous eyes, so clearly relieved to see the wizard recovering. "You took care of me," Merlin had whispered, his voice hoarse from coughing, but filled with wonder. "All this time, you've been taking care of me." Ember had made a soft chirping sound and nuzzled closer, as if to say, "Of course. What else would I do? You took care of me when I was helpless and new. Now I take care of you." It had been a revelation for Merlin, that moment. He had spent so long being the caretaker, the protector, the one everyone relied upon. He had grown so accustomed to giving that he'd almost forgotten how to receive. But Ember had taught him, was teaching him still, that true companionship flows both ways. That sometimes being cared for is just as important as caring for others. That allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to be weak, to need help, isn't a failure, but a gift you give to those who love you. Lying there in his bed, with Ember curled protectively beside him, Merlin had understood something profound. The dragon wasn't his possession, or even his responsibility. Ember was his equal, his partner, his family. They took care of each other. They protected each other. They were, in the truest sense, home to each other. When Merlin had recovered fully, a few days later, he had taken Ember to a meadow on the hillside above the tower. It was a place they both loved, where wildflowers grew in profusion, and the view stretched out for miles in every direction. They had spent the afternoon there, Merlin sitting in the soft grass, while Ember flew lazy circles overhead, occasionally landing to rest beside the wizard before taking off again. As the sun had begun to set, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Merlin had called Ember down one last time. The dragon had landed gracefully beside him, and Merlin had taken the dragon's face gently in both hands, looking into those eyes that held such intelligence, such love, such perfect understanding. "I need you to know something," Merlin had said quietly. "When I found you when you found me that winter night, I thought I was saving you. I thought I was the strong one, the wise one, the one who would teach and protect and provide. But you've taught me just as much as I've taught you. You've protected me just as much as I've protected you. You've given me just as much as I've given you more, perhaps." Ember had tilted its head, listening with that complete attention dragons give to things that matter. "You've taught me that strength isn't just about power or knowledge," Merlin had continued. "It's also about vulnerability, about letting yourself need someone, about accepting care as graciously as you give it. You've taught me that I don't have to carry everything alone, that it's okay, it's good to have someone to lean on." The dragon had made a soft sound and leaned into Merlin's hands, closing its eyes in contentment. "I want you to know," Merlin had finished, his voice thick with emotion, "that you are not my pet or my ward or my responsibility. You are my family. You are my home. And I am grateful, so deeply grateful, for every day we have together." Ember's eyes had opened then, and the dragon had breathed out a stream of smoke that surrounded them both, and in that smoke were images, not of grand adventures or dramatic moments, but of simple things, of evenings by the fire, of shared meals, of quiet companionship, of all the ordinary, precious moments that make up a life lived together. And woven through all these images was a feeling pure and clear and unmistakable. Love, not the dramatic, passionate love of songs and stories, but the deep, steady, enduring love that grows between beings who have chosen each other, who have cared for each other, who have built a life together one day at a time. In the present moment, in the quiet chamber, Merlin's hand moves again over Ember's sleeping form, stroking gently from head to tail in a gesture so familiar it's almost unconscious. How many times has he made this gesture? Thousands? Tens of thousands? It doesn't matter. Each time feels like the first time, and like coming home all at once. The memory begins to dissolve, fading back into the general tapestry of all their years together, but its essence remains the understanding that their bond is not one of dependence, but of interdependence. Not of obligation, but of choice. Not of necessity, but of love. Merlin's breathing has become even slower now, almost imperceptible. His mind is drifting away from memory, away from thought, toward the deep healing darkness of true sleep. But even as consciousness fades, even as he slips across that final threshold into dreams, one truth remains bright and clear in his heart. He is not alone. He has never been alone, not since that winter night when a tiny egg appeared at his door. He has Ember. Ember has him, and that simple, profound fact is enough. It's everything. The last conscious thought Merlin has before sleep claims him completely is a feeling of such perfect contentment, such complete peace, that it seems to fill the entire chamber, the entire tower, the entire world. It's the feeling of being exactly where you belong, with exactly who you belong with, needing nothing more than what you have, grateful beyond words for the gift of companionship, for the blessing of love. And then even that thought fades, and there is only warmth and darkness, and the gentle rhythm of two beings breathing as one, sleeping as one, resting as one in the deep peace of the night. The memory of the first night has carried him to this night, and all the nights between have led to this moment of perfect rest. The story that began with an egg in the snow has become a lifetime of shared days and shared dreams, and it continues still, unfolding moment by moment, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat, together, always together, home. They are together now, wizard and dragon, friend and friend, settling into the shape they make best, the shape of companionship, of trust, of shared rest. The firelight plays across them both, painting them in golds and oranges, in shadows and light. The magical orbs continue their slow drift overhead. The herbs hanging from the beams release their subtle scents. And in the crystal sphere on the table, the mist swirls more slowly now, as if it too is preparing for sleep. Everything in the chamber has found its place. Everything is as it should be. The day is done. The night has begun its gentle work, and two beings who have earned their rest are finally still. The evening has descended softly over the land, like a velvet cloak drawn gently across the shoulders of the world. The sun has long since dipped below the distant hills, painting the sky in its final gift of deep purples and indigos before surrendering completely to night. Stars have begun their patient work of illuminating the darkness, each one a tiny beacon of ancient light, and the moon, full and luminous, has risen to claim her throne among the heavens. In a valley wrapped in mist and mystery, where old oak trees stand like sentinels, and a river whispers its eternal song, there rises a tower. It is not the tallest tower, nor the grandest. It does not gleam with polished marble or glitter with jewels. This tower is built of honest stone, weathered by centuries of rain and wind and sun, its surface textured with moss and lichen, that speak of great age and patient endurance. This is Merlin's tower. And tonight, after a long day of tending to the needs of the kingdom, of counseling troubled souls and mending what was broken, the great wizard is finally coming home. You can see him now if you close your eyes and allow your imagination to paint the picture. He moves slowly up the winding path that leads to his tower's entrance, his tall staff tapping a gentle rhythm against the cobblestones. Tap, step, tap, step. The sound is peaceful, methodical, like a heartbeat or the ticking of a very old and very wise clock. Merlin's robe's deep midnight blue, embroidered with silver stars and moons, flow around him as he walks. The fabric whispers with each step, a soft susurration like wind through leaves. His beard, long and silver white, catches the moonlight and seems almost to glow. His face, lined with the wisdom of countless years, shows the gentle tiredness that comes at day's end. But there is peace there too, contentment, the knowledge that the work is done and rest is near. At his feet, keeping perfect pace with the wizard's unhurried steps, walks a small dragon. No larger than a house cat, this creature is unlike the fearsome beasts of legend. Its eyes, large and luminous, hold an ancient intelligence tempered with affection. The dragon's name is Ember, and it has been Merlin's companion for more years than either of them can quite remember. They move together in perfect harmony, wizard and dragon, friend and friend, both ready for the sweet release of sleep. Together they reach the heavy wooden door of the tower. Merlin places his weathered hand against the wood, and without a word, without a spell spoken aloud, the interior greets them with warmth. The temperature shift is immediate and comforting, like stepping from a cool evening into an embrace. The air inside carries the scent of old books and dried herbs, of wood smoke and beeswax candles, of time itself, somehow made tangible and kind. Before them rises a spiral staircase, carved from the same ancient stone as the tower walls. The steps are worn smooth in their centers, polished by centuries of footsteps Merlin's feet, and those of the long line of wise ones who came before him. Torches set in iron sconces cast a warm, flickering light that makes shadows dance gently against the curved walls. Merlin pauses at the base of the stairs, one hand resting on his staff, the other hanging loose at his side. He takes a deep breath, and you can breathe with him now. In through the nose, slowly, steadily, filling the lungs with that herb-scented, book-perfumed air. Hold for just a moment. Then out, a long, peaceful exhale that carries away the last remnants of the day's tensions. Come, Ember, he says softly, his voice like warm honey, like distant thunder over summer hills. Let us climb to our rest. And so they begin the ascent, one step at a time. There is no hurry here, no rush. Each step is taken with full presence, full awareness. Tap goes the staff. Step goes the foot. Tap. Step. Tap. The rhythm is hypnotic, soothing, like a lullaby without words. Ember climbs beside him, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, its claws clicking softly against the stone. Every few steps, the small dragon pauses to look back at Merlin, ensuring its friend is following, and the wizard smiles down with such tenderness that you can feel the warmth of it in your own chest. As they climb, you might notice your own body settling more deeply into rest. Perhaps your shoulders are releasing tension you didn't even know you were holding. Perhaps your jaw is unclenching, your hands unfolding. With each step Merlin takes, you can sink a little deeper into your own comfort, letting the surface beneath you hold you more completely. The staircase winds upward in a gentle spiral, not steep or demanding, just a patient curving path that knows where it's going and takes its time getting there. Along the walls, small alcoves hold various objects. A crystal that catches the torchlight and throws rainbow fragments across the stone. A small brass telescope, a clay pot with a sleeping plant whose leaves are folded for the night. A tiny hourglass with sand that flows upward instead of down. Each object tells a story, holds a memory, but tonight Merlin passes them all with barely a glance. He has seen them 10,000 times, and they are as familiar as his own reflection. Tonight, they are simply companions on the journey upward, silent witnesses to this daily ritual of returning, of ascending not just through physical space, but into the sacred territory of evening's peace. The climb is long enough to be a transition, a passage from the outer world to the inner sanctuary. With each step, the sounds of the outside world grow fainter. The whisper of wind, the distant hoot of an owl, the babbling of the river, all of these fade until there is only the tap-step-tap of Merlin's staff, the click of Ember's claws, and the soft sound of breathing. Your own breathing has likely fallen into rhythm with their climb, in as they step up, out as they pause, in, out. This is the breath of peace, the breath of coming home, the breath that knows sleep is near and welcomes it like an old and cherished friend. About halfway up the tower, there is a small landing with a narrow window. Merlin stops here, as he always does, and looks out across the darkened landscape. From this height, he can see the village in the distance, its windows glowing like earthbound stars. He can see the dark ribbon of the river reflecting the moon. He can see the forest, mysterious and vast, holding its own secrets beneath its canopy. He sees all of this, and he sends a silent blessing outward. This is the wizard's way. Even in his own weariness, he thinks of others. But then he releases even this, knowing that the world will turn without his watching, that others stand guard while he rests, that there is a time for vigilance and a time for surrender. The world keeps its own counsel tonight, he murmurs to Ember, who has sat patiently beside him, tail curled around its feet. We are released from it for a while. And with that, they continue their climb. The remaining steps pass in peaceful meditation, each one bringing them closer to the chamber at the tower's top, closer to the fire and the chair and the rest that awaits. Your own body might be feeling heavier now, pleasantly weighted, as though you too are climbing toward some high chamber of peace within yourself, moving through layers of wakefulness into something deeper, softer, more still. Before them is another door, smaller than the one below. The wizard places his palm against this door, and like the first, it opens willingly. Warm light spills out into the stairwell, golden and inviting. The scent of wood smoke and herbs intensifies. And from within comes the soft crackle of a fire that has been waiting patiently for its master to return. Merlin steps across the threshold, ember close at his heels. And as he does, as he enters his chamber at last, you can feel yourself crossing a threshold too moving from the ordinary world into the territory of dreams, from wakefulness into the first gentle stages of sleep. The climb is complete. The sanctuary is reached. And now the evening's true magic can begin. As Merlin steps fully into his chamber, the door closes softly behind him with a gentle click that sounds like a period at the end of a long, well-written sentence. The room welcomes him as it has welcomed him countless times before, and yet each return feels like the first homecoming that never grows old, never loses its capacity to comfort and restore. Take a moment to see this space with your mind's eye. Let the image form slowly, like a photograph developing, detail by detail, color by color, until it becomes so real you can almost step inside it yourself. The chamber is circular, following the shape of the tower itself. The walls are made of that same ancient stone, but here they are softened by tapestries that hang in gentle folds woven scenes of forests and rivers, of stars and moons, of stories told in thread and color. These tapestries move slightly in the barely perceptible currents of warm air that circulate through the room, creating an almost imperceptible sense of breathing, as if the chamber itself is a living thing that inhales peace and exhales comfort. The ceiling rises to a gentle dome, crossed by dark wooden beams that have aged to the color of deep earth. From these beams hang bundles of dried herbs, lavender and chamomile, rosemary and sage, their scent subtle but present, weaving through the air like an invisible blessing. Between the herb bundles, 3 orbs of soft golden light float lazily, drifting in slow circles. These are not candles or lanterns, but pure magic made visible light without fire, warmth without flame, gentle illumination that asks nothing and gives everything. The orbs pulse very slightly, very slowly, growing infinitesimally brighter and then softer in a rhythm that matches the breathing of someone in deep, peaceful sleep. And as you watch them in your imagination, you might find your own breathing naturally synchronizing with their gentle pulse, each breath taking you deeper into this place of rest. Along the curved walls, wooden shelves line up like old friends, standing shoulder to shoulder. Some books are thick as doorstops, others slim as secrets. Some have titles written in gold leaf that catches the light. Others bear no titles at all, their contents known only to Merlin and to themselves. Between the books are other treasures, accumulated over a lifetime of magic and wandering. A small brass telescope, its lens pointed permanently at some celestial mystery. A collection of smooth river stones, each one holding a different memory. Crystal spheres of various sizes that seem to contain entire worlds within them, swirling galaxies, frozen storms, captured starlight. Tiny wooden boxes whose lids are carved with intricate patterns. Clay vessels stoppered with wax. A set of glass vials containing liquids of impossible colors, sunset orange, midnight blue, the green of spring's first leaf. But your gaze moves past all of these wonders, drawn irresistibly to the heart of the chamber, the fireplace and the chair that waits before it. The fireplace is large, built into the stone wall, its opening arched and generous. The fire within burns low and perfect, not the fierce blaze of morning, but the mellow glow of evening. The logs, oak, and applewood have been burning for hours, transformed now into glowing coals and gentle flames that dance lazily, hypnotically, in shades of orange and gold and deep red. The fire doesn't crackle loudly, but speaks in soft whispers and occasional gentle pops. Each sound a small reminder that you are safe, you are warm, you are exactly where you need to be. The heat from the fireplace fills the chamber with such perfect warmth that you can almost feel it against your own skin. Not too hot, never overwhelming, just that ideal temperature that makes your muscles want to soften and release. That makes your body remember what it feels like to be completely comfortable. And before this fire, positioned at exactly the right distance to receive its warmth without its intensity, sits a wooden armchair. This is not some grand throne or elaborate piece of furniture. This is a chair that has been sat in, lived in, loved. Its wood has darkened with age and polish, smoothed by decades of contact with robes and hands. The arms are worn where Merlin's palms habitually rest. The seat is slightly hollowed where his weight has pressed, year after year, night after night, into the same blessed spot. The chair is fitted with cushions deep blue velvet, stuffed with down so soft it might as well be made of clouds. These cushions bear the permanent impression of Merlin's form, shaped by repetition into the perfect vessel for holding a weary wizard at day's end. Beside the chair, a small wooden table stands within easy reach. Its surface holds the tools and comforts of evening. A single candle burns in a brass holder, its flame steady and true. Beside it rests a brass cup filled with the steaming tisane herbs and honey mixed with hot water, creating a drink that smells of comfort and tastes of sleep. Next to the cup lies an open book, its pages marked with a ribbon of crimson silk, waiting patiently for the reader who may or may not return to its words tonight. There is also a crystal sphere, larger than the others, scattered throughout the room, sitting on a small brass stand. This sphere seems to be filled with a swirling mist that moves in slow currents, sometimes revealing glimpses of images within: a forest, a castle, a face, a star before the mist obscures them once more. This is Merlin's seeing stone, his window to the wider world, but tonight it shows him nothing urgent. The mist swirls gently, peacefully, showing him only dreams and possibilities, nothing that requires his attention, nothing that calls him away from rest. His staff still tapping its gentle rhythm against the stone floor. Tap, pause. With each tap, you might feel yourself settling even more deeply. The creature moves directly to the fireplace and settles on the warm stone of the hearth, circling once, twice, 3 times before lying down with a contented sigh that sends a small puff of golden smoke into the air. The dragon's eyes, so bright and alert on the climb up the tower, are already beginning to droop, the lids growing heavy with the promise of sleep. Merlin watches his companion settle, with a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. "You have the right idea, old friend," he says softly, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking any louder might disturb the peace that has gathered in this room like morning dew. The wizard moves to a wooden stand near the door, where his tall staff can rest for the night. He places it there carefully, ceremonially, the way one might lay down a burden that has been carried honorably, but which can now, gratefully, be set aside. The staff settles into its accustomed grooves, standing upright on its own, gleaming softly in the firelight. Next, Merlin removes his outer robe, the formal one embroidered with stars and moons, the one he wears when counseling kings or performing great magics. He hangs this carefully on a wooden peg, smoothing its folds with an absent, affectionate gesture, the way you might pat the head of a faithful dog. Beneath this outer robe, he wears simpler garments, soft wool in shades of deep gray and forest green, comfortable and worn, the clothes of a man at home rather than a wizard at work. He moves to the small table and picks up the brass cup of tisane, wrapping both hands around its warmth. The steam rises and curls, carrying with it the scent of chamomile and honey, of valerian and mint, of all the gentle herbs that encourage rest and welcome dreams. He raises the cup to his lips and drinks slowly, savoring each sip, feeling the warm liquid travel down his throat and settle in his belly, spreading relaxation from the inside out. As Merlin drinks, you might imagine your own body receiving this same warmth, this same comfort. Perhaps your own belly grows warm and relaxed. Perhaps your chest feels softer, more open. Perhaps your throat releases any tightness it might have been holding. The warmth spreads gentle and insistent, melting tension wherever it finds it. Merlin finishes his tisane and sets the cup down with the smallest clink of brass against wood. He looks at the open book, considers it for a moment, then smiles and closes it gently, keeping the ribbon in place. "Tomorrow," he whispers to the book. "Tomorrow you shall tell me your stories. Tonight I need simpler things. And what could be simpler, more profound, more necessary than rest?" The wizard turns at last to his chair, that faithful companion of so many evenings, and approaches it the way one might approach a beloved friend. He pauses before it, places his hands on its worn arms, and takes one more deep breath. This breath is different from the others. It is a breath of gratitude, of acknowledgement, of conscious transition from doing into being. Then slowly, carefully, with the deliberate grace of someone who knows exactly how precious this moment is, Merlin lowers himself into the chair. The cushions receive him like an embrace. The wood settles slightly under his weight with the softest creak, a sound of welcome. His body, which has been upright and active since before sunrise, now finally receives permission to rest, and it responds with a wave of relief so profound you can almost feel it yourself. Merlin's head settles back against the chair's high back. His shoulders drop. His hands come to rest on the worn arms of the chair, fingers loosely curled. His feet, still in their soft leather boots, extend toward the fire, crossing at the ankles. Every line of his body speaks the language of release, of letting go, of surrender to the evening's embrace. For a long moment, he simply sits, eyes open, gazing into the fire. He watches the flames dance their ancient dance, the same dance they've danced since humans first learned to kindle light in the darkness. There is magic in this fire, but it is the oldest magic. The first magic, the magic of warmth, of light, of safety from the night. Ember, from its place on the hearth, makes a small chirping sound, half purr, half sigh, as if to say, "You're finally here. Good. Now we can truly rest." And Merlin, hearing this, extends one hand toward his small companion. "Come here, little one," he murmurs. "There is room for both of us." The dragon needs no second invitation. With a grace that belies its stocky form, Ember rises and pads over to the chair. It looks up at Merlin with those luminous eyes, waiting for permission that has already been granted, and then, in one fluid movement, leaps up into the wizard's lap. The weight of the dragon is warm and solid and perfectly right. Ember circles once in Merlin's lap, its tail curling carefully to avoid bumping the wizard, and then settles down, laying its head against Merlin's chest, directly over his heart. And Merlin's arms, moving of their own accord, wrap gently around his companion, holding without clutching, supporting without restraining. His cheek comes to rest against the top of Ember's head, between the small horns that curve backward like polished stone. They are together now, wizard and dragon, friend and friend, settling into the shape they make best, the shape of companionship, of trust, of shared rest. The firelight plays across them both, painting them in golds and oranges, in shadows and light. The magical orbs continue their slow drift overhead. The herbs hanging from the beams release their subtle scents. And in the crystal sphere on the table, the mist swirls more slowly now, as if it too is preparing for sleep. Everything in the chamber has found its place. Everything is as it should be. The day is done. The night has begun its gentle work. And two beings who have earned their rest are finally still. In the stillness that settles over the chamber, there is a quality of peace, so profound it seems to have weight and substance. It fills the room like water filling a vessel, reaching into every corner, every shadow, every space between one breath and the next. This is not merely the absence of sound or movement. This is peace itself, made tangible, made real. Merlin sits in his chair with Ember curled warm and solid in his lap, and for a long while, neither of them moves at all. They simply exist together in this moment, breathing in synchrony, hearts beating their ancient rhythms. Two beings who have traveled through another day and arrived safely at evening's shore. The wizard's eyes remain open, but they have gone soft and unfocused, gazing into the fire without really seeing it. He is not thinking, not planning tomorrow's spells, or reviewing today's challenges. He is not worrying about the kingdom, or pondering the mysteries of the universe. He is simply being present in this moment, aware of the warmth of the fire, the weight of Ember in his lap, the gentle ache in his muscles that speaks of a day well spent. This is harder magic than most people realize. This art of being present, of releasing the mind's constant churning, of allowing thoughts to slow and soften like snowflakes drifting down through still air. But Merlin has practiced this magic for decades, and he knows its value. He knows that the mind, like any hard-working servant, needs permission to rest. And so he gives it that permission now, consciously and deliberately. You might offer yourself this same permission. Whatever thoughts are moving through your mind right now, plans for tomorrow, memories of today, worries large and small, you can acknowledge them without judgment, and then gently, so gently, let them drift away, like clouds across a summer sky, like leaves floating down a stream. They don't disappear completely, but they move into the background, into the soft blur at the edges of consciousness, leaving the center clear and calm and still. Merlin's breathing is deepened and slowed. Each inhalation is long and steady, drawing air deep into his lungs, expanding his chest and belly. Each exhalation is even longer, releasing everything, surrendering everything, letting go completely. And with each breath, his body settles more heavily into the chair, as if he's becoming part of it, as if the boundary between wizard and wood is growing less distinct. Ember's breathing has synchronized perfectly with Merlin's, the dragon's small chest rising and falling in harmony with the wizard's larger movements. The warmth the dragon radiates, that gentle, constant heat that comes from the eternal ember burning at the center of every dragon's being, seeps into Merlin's body, spreading through his chest, down into his belly, out along his arms and legs, all the way to his fingertips and toes. You might feel a similar warmth spreading through your own body now. Perhaps it starts in your center, your chest, or your belly, and radiates outward, moving through your muscles and bones, reaching places that have been tight or cold or uncomfortable, bringing them relief, bringing them ease. This warmth is healing. This warmth is peace. Let it flow wherever it wishes to go. In this deepening quiet, Merlin begins to do what he does every evening at this hour. He begins to cast his last spell of the night, not with staff or wand, not with dramatic gestures or thunderous words of power, but with something far simpler and far more profound. He begins to cast the spell of letting go. His lips move almost imperceptibly, forming words in a language older than the common tongue, older perhaps than language itself. These are not words written in any book, not even in the most ancient grimoire on his shelves. These are words that live in the body, in the bones, in the blood. They are the words the earth speaks to the seed, telling it to sleep through winter. The words the tide speaks to the shore, promising to return after receding. The words every living thing knows instinctively when it's time to rest. The spell begins at his crown, at the very top of his head, where his silver hair grows thin. He speaks to this part of himself first, giving it permission to soften, to release any tension, any holding. And as he does, you might bring awareness to your own crown, to the top of your own head, and notice if there's any tightness there. If there is, imagine it melting like snow in spring sunshine, dripping away, disappearing, leaving only softness behind. The spell moves down to his forehead, that place where worry and concentration so often gather and knot themselves into pain. Merlin's forehead, lined with the marks of long life and deep thought, smooths slightly as the spell works its magic. The vertical line between his eyebrows, the one that forms when he's studying a particularly difficult problem, fades and softens. Your own forehead might respond to this same magic. Let the muscles there release their grip. Let the skin smooth. Let any tightness between your eyebrows dissolve like sugar in warm water. There's nothing you need to figure out right now, nothing you need to solve. All of that can wait. For this moment, you are released from thinking. The spell continues down through Merlin's face, touching each feature in turn with its gentle command to let go. His eyes, which have seen so much wonders and horrors, beauty and sorrow, the full spectrum of human experience, are given permission to close. His eyelids, those thin veils between the outer world and the inner one, grow heavy, weighted down with the most pleasant weight imaginable, the weight of approaching sleep. And so, slowly, naturally, without effort or force, Merlin's eyes drift closed. The lashes come together, and the world as seen through eyes disappears, replaced by the vast, soft darkness behind the lids, a darkness that is not frightening but welcoming, like a starless sky or a room with the lights turned low. You might let your own eyes close now, if they haven't already. Or if you wish to keep them open a little longer, that's perfectly fine too. They will close when they're ready, when the weight on the lids becomes too sweet to resist. There's no hurry, no pressure. Everything in its own time. The spell moves to Merlin's jaw, that place where so many people unconsciously hold tension, clenching against the day's difficulties, grinding through worries in the night. But Merlin's jaw loosens, the muscles unlocking, the teeth parting slightly. His whole face takes on the softness of a sleeping child, that expression of complete trust and utter peace. Let your own jaw release. Let your teeth part slightly. Let your tongue rest loosely in your mouth, not pressed against the roof, but soft and easy. Feel how much more comfortable your face becomes when you're not holding it in any particular expression, when you simply let it be. Down through the neck, the spell travels, that column that holds up the head, that bears the weight of thought and speech and breath. Merlin's neck softens, and his head settles more deeply into the chair's support, trusting the wood to hold what he no longer needs to hold himself. Your own neck can soften now. Let your head be heavy. Let whatever is supporting it, pillow or mattress or chair, do the work. You don't need to hold yourself up anymore. You can let go. You can be held. The spell reaches Merlin's shoulders, those great bearing places where so much burden tends to accumulate. How much have these shoulders carried? How many responsibilities? How many worries? How many other people's problems have they supported? But now they can release all of that. They drop down, away from the ears, settling into a position of rest. The space between the shoulder blades widens. The chest opens slightly, making room for breath to flow more easily. Your shoulders are invited to do the same. Let them drop. Let them be heavy. Feel the space between your shoulder blades expanding, creating room, creating ease. Every breath you take can help them settle a little more, release a little more, until they're as soft and loose as wet sand. Down the arms, the spell flows, from shoulders to elbows, from elbows to wrists, from wrists to fingers. Merlin's arms rest heavily on the chair's arms, all effort gone from them. His hands lie open and relaxed, fingers gently curled, not grasping anything, not holding on, simply existing in a state of complete release. The hands that have wielded such power, that have shaped reality itself with gesture and will, are now innocent as a baby's hands, doing nothing, wanting nothing, being nothing, but hands at rest. Let your own arms grow heavy. Let them sink into whatever surface is beneath them. Let your hands unfold and soften. Notice how much energy it takes to make a fist, to hold tension in the fingers, and then notice how little energy it takes to simply let them be loose and soft and still. Choose the easier way. Choose the way of release. The spell continues its work through Merlin's chest, that cavity that houses the heart and lungs, those tireless organs that have kept him alive through century upon century. His breathing has become so slow and deep now that each breath seems to last forever, a long, slow inhalation that fills him completely, and an even longer, slower exhalation that empties him just as completely. His heartbeat, which has quickened with excitement and slowed with meditation countless times throughout this long day, now settles into the steady, peaceful rhythm of approaching sleep. Feel your own chest softening. Feel your own heart beating. That faithful companion that has been with you since before your first conscious memory and will be with you until your last. It knows how to keep you alive without your help or attention. You can trust it completely. And as you trust it, it can settle into its most peaceful rhythm, the rhythm that serves you best when you're at rest. Down through the belly, the spell travels, that soft center where so much emotion is held, where anxiety often knots itself into physical discomfort. But Merlin's belly is soft now, rising and falling with each breath, loose and relaxed. All the tension that might have gathered there during the day, the tightness that comes with difficult decisions or troubling news, has melted away, dissolved by the spell's gentle insistence on peace. Your own belly can soften too. Let it be round and loose. Let it rise and fall with your breathing without any control or manipulation. Just let it move naturally, easily, finding its own rhythm, its own perfect pattern of expansion and release. The spell moves down into Merlin's hips and legs, those structures that have carried him up the tower stairs, that have supported him through a long day of standing and sitting and walking. His hips release into the chair's seat, his weight fully supported. His thighs go heavy and still, his knees unlock. His calves soften, his ankles loosen. Let your own hips and legs receive this same magic. Let them grow heavy, so heavy they seem to sink into the surface beneath them, becoming one with it. Let every muscle from hip to ankle release its grip, letting go of any holding, any tension, any work. Finally, the spell reaches Merlin's feet, those patient servants that have taken him everywhere he needed to go, that have stood firm when standing was needed, and walked on when walking was called for. Even through his soft leather boots, he can feel the spell working, loosening the small bones and joints, relaxing the arches, softening the toes. And your own feet, wherever they are, can receive this final gift of release. Let them be heavy and soft. Let the bones settle. Let the muscles rest. Let your feet remember that they don't need to go anywhere right now, that they can simply be still, simply be held, simply be at peace. The spell is complete. From crown to toe, from surface to depth, Merlin has given every part of himself permission to rest. His body has become heavy and soft, supported completely by the chair, requiring nothing of itself except to be. And Ember, sweet Ember, pressed warm against the wizard's chest, has been breathing in the magic of this spell, absorbing it through proximity, through love, through the mysterious connection that binds wizard to dragon. The small creature is completely relaxed now, its weight distributed evenly across Merlin's lap, its breathing so slow and gentle, it's barely perceptible. Together they sit in the firelit chamber, two beings wrapped in the spell of quiet, held in the embrace of peace, drifting gently toward the shore of sleep. Time has become strange and fluid in Merlin's chamber, the way it always does in that liminal space between waking and sleeping. Minutes might be passing, or hours, or perhaps time has stopped altogether, held suspended like a dewdrop on a spider's web. It doesn't matter. Time has no power here, no urgency, no demands. There is only the eternal now, stretching out in all directions, soft and infinite. The fire continues its patient work, burning lower now, the flames smaller but no less warm. The logs have transformed themselves almost entirely into glowing coals, beds of deep orange and red that pulse gently, like the beating of some great, peaceful heart buried in the earth. Occasionally, a small flame flickers up, dances for a moment in shades of blue and gold, then settles back down into the ember glow. These little flares of light are hypnotic, drawing the eye, inviting the mind to follow their movements, to lose itself in their ancient wordless story. The three magical orbs overhead have drifted lower, descending slowly like small moons coming down to visit the earth. They hover now just above Merlin and Ember, their golden light dimming gradually, fading from bright gold to soft amber, to the warm honeyed glow of candlelight seen through closed eyelids. Their movement has slowed even further, their circles becoming lazier, dreamier, as if they too are succumbing to the spell of sleep that fills the chamber. On the small table beside the chair, the single candle is burned down to half its original height. Its flame is steady and small, a tiny point of light that seems less like fire and more like a star that has gotten lost and wandered inside. The crystal sphere beside has grown still, the mist within it no longer swirling, but hanging motionless, frozen in mid-movement, waiting. Even the herbs hanging from the ceiling beams seem to breathe more slowly, releasing their scents in softer, more gentle waves. Everything, the fire, the orbs, the candle, the very air itself, is moving toward stillness, toward silence, toward sleep. Merlin's breathing has become so slow and deep that long moments pass between each breath, in, and the world pauses, holding itself in gentle suspension. Out, and everything softens a little more, releases a little more, lets go a little more. His chest rises and falls beneath Ember's warm weight with the patience of tides, with the unhurried rhythm of seasons turning. Your own breath has likely found this same rhythm by now, or perhaps an even slower one. Each inhalation is effortless, happening all by itself. Each exhalation is a letting go so complete, it feels like melting, like dissolving, like becoming one with the softness that surrounds you. There's no need to count the breaths or control them in any way. They know their own perfect pace. They know exactly what you need. In this deep quietness, Merlin's mind has begun to dream, even though his body hasn't quite reached full sleep yet. This is the threshold place, the borderland, where thoughts transform into images, where the logical mind gives way to the symbolic one, where the boundaries between what is real and what is imagined become beautifully, blessedly unclear. Behind his closed eyelids, Merlin sees colors, not the colors of the waking world, but dream colors. Colors that don't have names. Colors that exist only in this in-between place. They flow and blend like watercolors on wet paper, creating patterns that almost mean something, that hover on the edge of significance before dissolving into new patterns, new almost meanings. He sees shapes moving in these colors familiar and strange at once. A forest that might be the one outside his tower, or might be every forest that ever was. A river that flows upward into the sky. Stars that sing in voices like bells. These images don't trouble him or demand his attention. They simply float past like clouds, like leaves on a stream, like petals falling from an unseen tree. You might be seeing similar things now, behind your own closed eyelids. Perhaps colors, perhaps shapes, perhaps memories transformed into dreams, perhaps dreams not yet fully formed. Whatever you see or don't see is perfect. You don't need to focus on any of it or make sense of it. Just let it drift, let it flow, let it be whatever it wants to be. Ember stirs slightly in Merlin's lap, making a small sound something between a purr and a sigh that vibrates gently against the wizard's chest. The dragon is deep in its own dreams now, traveling through whatever landscapes dragons visit when they sleep. Perhaps Ember flies through caverns of crystal where treasures beyond counting glitter in eternal twilight. Perhaps the dragon soars through skies where the clouds are made of smoke and starlight. Perhaps Ember dreams of nothing at all, simply resting in the vast, peaceful darkness that asks nothing and gives everything. The small movement and sound from his companion brings a smile to Merlin's lips, so slight it's barely there, but real nonetheless. Even on the threshold of sleep, even with his mind already halfway into the dream country, some part of him remains aware of this small, warm presence, this beloved friend, this fellow traveler through the years and the magic and the quiet evenings. His hand, which has been resting loosely on Ember's back, moves slightly, or perhaps only thinks about moving, the intention so soft it barely translates into action. Whether the movement is real or imagined, it conveys the same thing: affection, protection, companionship, peace. In the fireplace, one of the larger coals splits with the gentlest of sounds, falling into two pieces that glow even brighter for a moment, before settling back into the general ember bed. The small sound is like a period at the end of a sentence, like a door closing softly, like the last note of a lullaby fading into silence. The chamber is darker now than it was, though not dark. There is still the glow of the coals, still the soft light from the orbs and the candle, but it's the darkness that's winning, gently and inevitably. Not a harsh darkness, not a frightening one, but the kind darkness of night, the darkness that wraps around you like a blanket, the darkness that says it's time to stop watching and start dreaming. Merlin's thoughts, such as they are, have become very simple. Not the complex, multi-layered thoughts of the day strategies and spells, problems and solutions, the intricate dance of cause and effect. These evening thoughts are more like impressions, like feelings, like the thoughts a tree might have if trees could think. Warm, safe, comfortable, home, rest, sleep, and underlying all of these, so fundamental it's barely a thought at all, but more like the ground beneath all other thoughts. All is well. All is well. All is well. This is the great truth that sleep requires us to believe, even if only for a few hours, that we can let go of vigilance, that we can stop holding everything together, that the world will continue turning without our watchfulness, that it's safe to surrender, to release, to fall into the great darkness and trust that morning will come again. Merlin knows this truth in his bones, has learned it through decades of practice, and so he lets himself fall, gently and completely, into the deepening peace. You can fall too, if you're ready. You can let go of any last threads of wakefulness you might still be holding, any last bits of awareness you're still clinging to. It's safe to fall. It's good to fall. Falling into sleep is not a loss but a gift, not a defeat but a homecoming. The boundary between Merlin and the chair has dissolved completely now. He is not sitting in the chair. He is part of the chair. The boundary between his body and Ember's body has dissolved too. They are not two separate beings, but one warm, breathing, dreaming wholeness. The boundary between the chamber and the wizard has dissolved. He is the fire and the stones, the air and the darkness, the quiet and the peace. Everything is becoming one. Everything is becoming simple. Everything is becoming soft. The magical orbs have dimmed to almost nothing now, barely visible, like stars at dawn, just before they disappear into daylight. But this is not dawn approaching. This is the deepest part of night, the darkest hour, the time when sleep is deepest and dreams are strongest. The candle flame wavers, growing smaller, a tiny thread of light barely holding on. And then, with a grace that seems intentional, it flickers once more and goes out, a thin trail of smoke rising into the air, carrying with it the last remnant of waking consciousness, the last bit of the day that was. The chamber is dark now, lit only by the ember glow of the fire, and even that is fading, growing softer and darker and more distant, like a memory of warmth rather than warmth itself, like the idea of light rather than light itself. Merlin's breathing has become so slow and quiet that it's almost imperceptible. The rise and fall of his chest is gentle, rhythmic, eternal. He has crossed the threshold. He is no longer in the waking world. He has entered the realm of dreams, that mysterious country we all visit every night, that place where we are healed and restored, where our minds process and integrate and make sense of all we've experienced, where magic happens without effort or intention. Ember sleeps too, the dragon's small body completely relaxed, completely trusting, completely at peace. The faint glow that usually emanates from the creature's scales has dimmed to almost nothing, just the barest hint of warmth, like the last embers of a fire that has burned down to contentment. The room holds them both wizard and dragon, master and companion, friend and friend, in its stone embrace, protecting them through the night, keeping watch so they don't have to, standing guard so they can rest. Outside the small window, the moon has risen higher in the sky, flooding the landscape with silver light. The distant hills are soft shadows against the star-studded sky. The forest is a dark mass, mysterious and ancient, holding its own dreams. The river continues its eternal song. Water over stone, the sound so constant it becomes silence, so endless it becomes peace. Inside and outside, near and far, everything is at rest. Everything sleeps. The whole world has entered the great pause, the sacred stillness, the necessary darkness. And you, dear traveler, you who have journeyed with us through this long, gentle evening, you have arrived too. You have climbed the tower. You have entered the chamber. You have cast the spell of letting go. You have crossed the threshold. You are home now. You are safe now. You are held now. There is nothing more you need to do. Nowhere else you need to go. Nothing left to accomplish or understand or figure out. There is only this, the soft darkness, the gentle warmth, the quiet breathing, the peaceful dreams that wait just beyond the edge of consciousness. Sleep now, dear one. Sleep deeply. Sleep peacefully. Sleep well. The night will watch over you. The darkness will hold you. And when morning comes, as it always does, as it always will, you will wake renewed, restored, ready to begin again. But that is for morning to worry about. For now, there is only night. Only peace. Only sleep. Only dreams. Only peace. Only sleep. Only dreams. In the deepest part of the night, when the world is most quiet and sleep is most profound, something beautiful happens. The dreams begin. Not the anxious dreams that sometimes come in the early hours of sleep, when the mind is still processing the day's worries and tensions. Not the scattered, nonsensical dreams that flicker and fade without meaning or memory. These are the deep dreams, the healing dreams. The dreams that come when body and mind have surrendered completely to rest, when consciousness has released its grip and allowed something older, wiser, and infinitely more mysterious to take the reins. Merlin dreams. In his dream, he is walking through a forest, but it is not like any forest in the waking world. The trees here are impossibly tall. their trunks wide as towers, their branches reaching up and up until they disappear into a canopy so high and so thick that it becomes a ceiling of green gold light. The air is warm and soft, filled with the scent of flowers that don't exist in any garden fragrances of honey and starlight, of morning dew and distant rain, of memories you can't quite name but recognize nonetheless. He is young in this dream, or perhaps ageless. His beard is still silver white, but his body moves with an ease and lightness he hasn't felt in decades of waking life. There is no staff in his hand, no weight on his shoulders, no responsibility pressing down on him. He is simply himself, walking through beauty, breathing peace, existing in perfect harmony with everything around him. Ember is with him, of course. In the dream, the dragon is larger, perhaps the size of a horse, with wings that span wide and magnificent when unfurled. But despite this impressive size, Ember is no more fierce or frightening than in waking life. The dragon walks beside Merlin with the same gentle companionship, occasionally bounding ahead like an enthusiastic puppy to investigate some interesting smell or sound, then returning to the wizard's side with eyes full of joy. They walk together through this impossible forest, and there is no destination, no goal, no purpose beyond the walking itself. This is not a journey towards something, but a journey within something, within peace, within beauty, within the eternal now that has no beginning and no end. As they walk, they pass other dreamers. A deer with eyes like liquid amber stands at the edge of a clearing, watching them with complete trust, no fear at all. A fox with fur that seems spun from copper and gold trots past, nodding to them as if acknowledging old friends. Birds with plumage and colors that don't have names sing overhead, but their songs are not separate sounds. They blend into a harmony that becomes part of the forest itself, part of the air, part of the peace. These creatures are not really separate beings. Merlin understands in the way you understand things in dreams through knowing rather than thinking. They are all part of the same dream, all expressions of the same peaceful consciousness, all waves in the same ocean of sleep. You might be in this forest too, though you may not remember being there when you wake. You might be walking your own path through these ancient trees, breathing this same soft air, hearing these same wordless songs. Or perhaps you're dreaming something entirely different, a beach, where waves whisper secrets, a meadow where grass sways in a wind that carries no cold, a room filled with golden light where everyone you love is gathered and safe. Whatever you're dreaming, wherever you are, it is exactly where you need to be. In Merlin's dream, he comes to a clearing where a pool of water lies perfectly still, reflecting the canopy above and the scattered pieces of sky visible through the leaves. The water is so clear it's almost invisible, so still it looks like a mirror lying on the forest floor. He approaches it and looks down into its depths. But instead of seeing his own reflection, he sees images rising up from within the water, like memories surfacing, like stories being told by the pool itself. He sees a younger version of himself, a boy barely into his teens, discovering his first magic, a simple spell to make a flower bloom. and the wonder on his face when the bud actually opened, when he realized he could touch the world with intention, and the world would respond. He feels again that first thrill of power, but also something deeper. The first understanding that magic is not about control, but about connection. Not about domination, but about dialogue with the living world. He sees himself as a young man, standing in a throne room, advising a king who would become one of the greatest rulers in history. He sees the weight of that responsibility settling onto his shoulders. The moment when he understood that his gifts were not his own to keep, but to give. That wisdom shared is wisdom multiplied. He sees decades flowing past, like water spells cast, and kingdoms saved, battles won and peace preserved, students taught, and wisdom passed on. He sees the faces of people he has helped, lives he has touched, moments where his presence made the difference between darkness and light. But he also sees his failures, his mistakes, the times when even his power wasn't enough, when people suffered despite his best efforts. And as he watches all of this in the dream pool, he feels something profound settling into his heart. Not pride in his accomplishments or shame for his failures, but something simpler and truer, acceptance. It has all been exactly as it needed to be. Every triumph and every tragedy, every success and every failure, every moment of joy and every moment of sorrow, all of it has been part of a pattern too large to see while living it, too complex to understand while standing in the middle of it. But here, in the dream, he can see the pattern. He can see how it all fits together, how every thread light and dark, golden and gray weaves into a tapestry of such beauty and meaning that it takes his breath away. Tears come to his eyes in the dream, but they are not tears of sadness. They are tears of recognition, of gratitude, of peace. He has lived a life. He has done what he could, and it has been enough. It has been more than enough. It has been exactly what it needed to be. Ember comes to stand beside him at the pool's edge, and the dragon's reflection appears in the water next to his own. The small creature large in the dream, but still somehow small in the way that matters, leans against Merlin's leg, and the wizard reaches down to place his hand on the dragon's head, scratching gently behind the small horns. "We've come a long way, haven't we, old friend?" Merlin says in the dream, his voice soft with affection. Ember makes a sound, that same purr sigh from waking life, and the sound ripples out across the pool, creating circles that expand and expand, carrying with them a truth too deep for words. Companionship is the greatest magic. Love is the most powerful spell. And connection is what makes all of it all, the living and dying, all the striving and resting, all the waking and sleeping worthwhile. The images in the pool begin to fade, dissolving back into clear water, and then even the water begins to fade, becoming transparent, becoming nothing, becoming the soft darkness that underlies all dreams. And Merlin and Ember stand at the edge of this darkness, not afraid of it, not trying to resist it, simply acknowledging it as the natural next step. The forest around them is fading too, the trees becoming shadows, the shadows becoming mist, the mist becoming the formless, gentle void from which all dreams emerge and into which all dreams return. This is the deepest place, the most profound rest. This is the sleep beneath sleep, the peace beyond peace, the darkness that is not the absence of light, but the presence of something so vast and so complete that light is simply a small expression of it. Merlin lets himself dissolve into this darkness, and it is not frightening. It is like coming home after a very long journey. It is like being held by something infinitely larger than himself, something that has always been holding him, but which he could only notice when he became this still, this quiet, this surrendered. You are being held by this same darkness, this same vastness, this same infinite peace. Even as you sleep, even as you dream or don't dream, even as your consciousness flickers like a distant star or disappears entirely, you are held. You have always been held. You will always be held. In this deepest place, there are no more images, no more stories, no more thoughts or memories or meanings. There is only being pure, simple, complete. Only existence, stripped of all complexity, reduced to its essential truth. You are alive. You are breathing. You are resting. And that is enough. That is everything. Hours pass. The time has no meaning here. The moon continues its arc across the sky. The stars wheel slowly in their eternal dance. The earth turns on its axis, carrying the tower and the chamber and the sleeping wizard and the sleeping dragon through the darkness toward the inevitable return of light. But that is still far away. There are still hours of rest remaining, hours of healing and restoration, hours of the body doing its quiet work of renewal cells repairing themselves, memories being sorted and stored, energy being replenished, the whole miraculous system of body and mind maintaining itself without any conscious effort or direction. All of this happens while you sleep. All of this magic occurs in the darkness, in the silence, in the deep rest that asks nothing of you except that you surrender to it. In his chair in the tower chamber, Merlin's body breathes slowly, rhythmically, peacefully. His heart beats its steady, reliable beat. His blood flows through his veins, carrying oxygen and nourishment to every cell. His mind, released from the demands of waking consciousness, processes and integrates the experiences of the day, filing away what needs to be kept and releasing what no longer serves. Ember, curled in the wizard's lap, breathes in perfect synchrony with his master, the dragon's small form rising and falling with Merlin's chest. The bond between them, forged over years of shared experience, tempered by trust and affection, remains strong even in sleep, perhaps especially in sleep, when all pretense falls away and only the truth remains. They sleep and sleep and sleep, diving deeper and deeper into rest, into peace, into the healing darkness that restores all who surrender to it. And you sleep too, dear traveler. You have journeyed so far tonight, up the tower stairs, into the chamber, through the spell of letting go, across the threshold, into the dream country, and finally here, to this deepest place where there is nothing left to do but rest. Rest now. Rest completely. Rest without reservation or hesitation. Let the darkness hold you. Let the silence fill you. Let the peace sink into your bones, into your blood, into the very center of your being. Morning will come. It always does. The sun will rise. The birds will sing. The world will call you back. But that is for morning. That is for later. That is for the future that will take care of itself. For now, there is only this: the deep sleep, the profound rest, the blessed darkness. For now, there is only peace. Only peace. Only peace. Sleep, dear one. Sleep deeply. Sleep long. Sleep well. The night is kind. The darkness is gentle. And you are safe. You are so very, very safe. And in Merlin's tower, in a chamber lit only by the faintest glow of dying embers, a wizard and a dragon sleep on, wrapped in each other's warmth, held in the embrace of night, dreaming dreams of forests and light and love and peace. And they will sleep until morning comes to wake them, until the sun touches the eastern window with its gentle fingers, until it's time to rise and begin again. But that is not now. That is not yet. That is still far away, across the vast, soft ocean of night. For now, there is only sleep. Deep, healing, perfect sleep. And that is exactly as it should be. And so our journey ends, and your peaceful sleep begins. You are safe, you are calm, you are deeply relaxed. Let sleep take you now, gently and completely. Sweet dreams, dear friend. Good night, and rest well.